If you've ever tried keto and thought, why is this so hard? This video is for you. I'm a physician and I want to make this very clear right from the start. Keto is not about willpower. It's about chemistry. When you remove carbohydrates, your hormones change, your brain chemistry changes, your metabolism finally switches from sugar burning to fat burning. But here's where most people fail. They accidentally eat foods that look keto but still trigger insulin. Today, I'm going to simplify everything. In this video, I'll show you the 10 best zero-carb foods, foods that do not raise blood sugar, do not spike insulin, and make keto dramatically easier, especially if you're over 40, insulin resistant, or stuck in a plateau. These foods work with your biology, not against it. And I'll explain why, what the science says, and how to use them in real life, not just on paper. If you have ever felt like keto was impossible, like your body was fighting you every step of the way, I want you to understand something deeply important right now. The problem was never you. It was insulin. For decades, we were told that weight gain was a moral failure, that hunger meant weakness, that cravings were a lack of discipline. But science tells a very different story. Every time you eat carbohydrates, your blood sugar rises. And every time blood sugar rises, your pancreas releases insulin. Insulin is not a villain. It is a storage hormone. Its job is to take energy and lock it away. But here is the shocking truth. As long as insulin is high, your body is physically blocked from burning fat. Not emotionally blocked, not mentally blocked, biochemically blocked. Zero-carb foods change everything because they do not raise blood sugar at all. No spike, no crash, no insulin surge. And when insulin stays low, a metabolic door opens that most people have never experienced in their entire adult lives. That door is fat burning. Studies from metabolic research labs show that insulin is the primary switch that determines whether the body stores fat or releases it. You can eat fewer calories, run miles a day, and still fail to lose weight if insulin remains elevated. That's why so many people feel exhausted, hungry, and defeated on traditional diets. They are fighting their own hormones. When you eat zero-carb foods, eggs, beef, butter, fatty fish, you remove the trigger that keeps insulin elevated. Within hours, the liver begins converting fat into ketones. These ketones are not just fuel, they are signaling molecules. They tell the brain that food is abundant, that energy is stable, that there is no emergency. This is why people on zero-carb keto often report something almost unbelievable. Hunger disappears, not because they are forcing themselves to eat less, but because their brain finally receives a steady fuel supply. Functional MRI studies show that ketones reduce activity in the hunger centers of the brain. That's not motivation, that's chemistry. One of the most shocking facts in modern nutrition is that protein and fat do not significantly stimulate insulin when carbohydrates are removed. This means you can eat until you are satisfied without triggering the hormone that locks fat inside your cells. This is why zero-carb foods feel freeing. You are no longer negotiating with your appetite. You are no longer counting every bite in fear. Your body regulates itself the way it was designed to before modern processed food hijacked human metabolism. Research on insulin resistance reveals another critical truth. Frequent insulin spikes damage insulin receptors over time. This forces the pancreas to release even more insulin to get the same job done. It's a vicious cycle that leads to obesity, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, and even Alzheimer's, now referred to by some researchers as type 3 diabetes. Zero-carb foods interrupt this cycle at its root. Lower insulin allows receptors to heal. Blood sugar stabilizes, inflammation drops. This is not theory. It's observed repeatedly in clinical practice and metabolic studies. There is a reason why patients placed on very low carbohydrate or zero-carb diets often see rapid improvements in triglycerides, HDL cholesterol, and fasting insulin levels within weeks. These changes happen long before significant weight loss occurs. That tells us something profound. Metabolic healing comes first, weight loss follows. Zero-carb foods accelerate this healing by removing the constant hormonal assault caused by sugar and starch. And here is something almost no one tells you. Insulin doesn't just control fat storage. It controls access to stored energy. High insulin traps fat inside fat cells, forcing the body to rely on sugar for fuel. When sugar runs out, hunger becomes urgent, even painful. This is why low-fat, high-carb diets create constant snacking and cravings. Zero-carb foods flip that equation. Fat becomes accessible again. The body shifts into a calm, steady burn. Energy becomes stable. Brain fog clears, mood improves. These effects are so consistent that many clinicians now recognize them as signs of metabolic flexibility returning. Evolution supports this as well. For most of human history, carbohydrates were seasonal and scarce. Humans survived and thrived on animal foods that provided protein and fat without sugar. Insulin was low most of the time. Fat burning was normal. Modern diets keep insulin elevated from morning until night, something our biology was never designed to handle. Zero-carb eating is not extreme. It is a return to metabolic conditions under which the human body evolved. Perhaps the most emotionally powerful part of this shift is what happens psychologically. When insulin drops and ketones rise, the brain experiences stability. Dopamine signaling improves. Cravings lose their grip. People often say, "I finally feel in control," but what they really mean is, "My hormones are no longer controlling me." This is why keto becomes easy when done correctly. Not because it removes food, but because it removes the biochemical chaos that drives overeating. And let's be very clear, this is not about perfection. Even small reductions in insulin exposure create measurable benefits. But zero-carb foods offer the cleanest, most reliable way to keep insulin low enough for fat burning to turn on fully. They remove guesswork, they remove hidden sugars, they remove the constant metabolic noise that keeps the body stuck. When people say keto is hard, what they usually mean is that they are still eating foods that quietly spike insulin. Low-carb breads, sweeteners, processed snacks labeled keto. Zero-carb foods do not lie to your metabolism. They do not send mixed signals. They allow the body to enter ketosis naturally and stay there with less effort than almost any other approach. This is why zero-carb foods don't just support keto, they unlock it. They transform keto from a battle of willpower into a biological process that unfolds on its own. When insulin stays low, fat burning becomes inevitable. Hunger quiets, energy rises, and the body finally does what it was always meant to do: protect you, fuel you, and heal itself from the inside out. For years, people were told that hunger was something to fight, something to suppress, something to ignore. But hunger is not a character flaw. Hunger is a hormone-driven signal, and when those hormones are unstable, no amount of motivation will save you. This is where animal-based fats and proteins change the entire story, because they speak the language of human biology in a way ultra-processed foods never can. When you eat foods like eggs, beef, butter, and fatty fish, you are not just eating calories. You are sending powerful hormonal signals that tell your body it is safe, nourished, and no longer in survival mode. One of the most shocking findings in modern nutrition science is that protein and fat trigger satiety hormones far more effectively than carbohydrates. Studies show that animal protein stimulates peptide YY and cholecystokinin, hormones that tell the brain, "We've had enough." Carbohydrates, especially refined ones, fail to trigger these signals properly. That's why someone can eat 500 calories of bread and still feel hungry, while a steak of the same calories shuts down appetite for hours. This is not about discipline. This is about hormonal messaging. Fat plays an even deeper role. Dietary fat slows gastric emptying, meaning food stays in the stomach longer, creating a prolonged sense of fullness. But beyond that, fat directly lowers the stress hormone cortisol when insulin is kept low. Chronically elevated cortisol drives belly fat, muscle loss, and intense cravings. Animal fats calm that stress response. This is why people often report a sense of physical and emotional calm after switching to a keto diet rich in animal foods. Their nervous system is no longer being whipped by blood sugar highs and crashes. Protein from animal sources is uniquely bioavailable. Research consistently shows that animal proteins contain all essential amino acids in the correct ratios for human needs. When the body receives complete protein, it stops demanding more food. Incomplete or low-quality protein forces the brain to keep searching for nutrients even when calories are high. This is known as protein leverage. And it explains why people overeat processed foods but naturally regulate intake when eating meat, eggs, and fish. Then there is insulin, the master regulator. Carbohydrates spike insulin quickly and repeatedly. Animal fats barely stimulate insulin at all, and protein causes only a modest, controlled response. This creates hormonal stability that most people have never experienced. When insulin is stable, leptin, the hormone that signals long-term fullness, starts working again. Leptin resistance is a major driver of obesity, and it is strongly linked to high insulin levels. Lower insulin allows leptin sensitivity to return, which means your brain can finally hear the message that you have enough stored energy. This hormonal repair is why cravings begin to fade. Cravings are not random thoughts. They are biochemical alarms. Blood sugar drops, insulin overshoots, stress hormones spike, and the brain screams for fast energy. Animal-based meals prevent this entire cascade. They provide slow, steady fuel that keeps blood glucose flat. Continuous glucose monitor studies repeatedly show that meals built around fat and protein produce minimal blood sugar variation. Flat blood sugar means a quiet brain, and a quiet brain does not obsess over food. There is also a powerful effect on ghrelin, the hunger hormone. Ghrelin rises before meals and falls after eating, but carbohydrate-heavy meals cause it to rebound quickly. Protein and fat suppress ghrelin for much longer periods. This is why people on ketogenic diets often find themselves unintentionally eating fewer meals. Not because they are restricting, but because hunger simply does not return with urgency. This pattern mirrors what researchers observe in populations consuming traditional animal-based diets, where eating once or twice a day was normal without conscious fasting. From an evolutionary perspective, this makes perfect sense. Humans evolved eating animals for millions of years. Our digestive system, stomach acid, and enzyme profile are optimized for fat and protein digestion. Only recently have we flooded the system with refined carbohydrates. The result has been a breakdown in appetite regulation. Animal foods restore the environment in which hunger hormones evolved to function properly. The brain benefits as well. Fatty acids from animal foods support myelin, the insulating layer around neurons that allows electrical signals to travel efficiently. Ketones produced from fat metabolism provide a more stable fuel source for the brain than glucose. Brain imaging studies show improved energy efficiency when ketones are available. This is why many people report mental clarity and emotional stability when eating high-fat, animal-based meals. Mood swings driven by blood sugar volatility begin to disappear. Another uncomfortable truth is that low-fat diets often increase hunger because fat-soluble vitamins, A, D, E, and K, are poorly absorbed without dietary fat. Deficiencies in these vitamins are linked to fatigue, immune dysfunction, and hormonal imbalance. Animal fats naturally contain or help absorb these nutrients. When deficiencies are corrected, the body stops sending emergency hunger signals. What feels like appetite control is often simply nutritional sufficiency. Perhaps the most powerful transformation happens psychologically. When hunger becomes predictable and manageable, fear around food dissolves. People stop thinking about their next meal constantly. This mental freedom is not accidental. It is the direct result of hormones aligning with biology. Clinical observations show that people eating adequate animal protein and fat experience higher diet adherence, not because of motivation, but because the diet no longer feels like deprivation. This is why calorie counting fails so often. Calories ignore hormones. Two meals with identical calories can produce radically different hormonal responses. One leads to hunger, fatigue, and cravings. The other leads to satiety, energy, and calm. Animal-based fats and proteins consistently fall into the second category. They reduce the noise in the system so the body can self-regulate again. When people say keto feels easy after a certain point, this is what they are describing. Hunger is no longer an emergency. Meals are satisfying, energy is steady, and the body stops fighting weight loss because it no longer perceives a threat. This is not magic. It is physiology doing what it was designed to do when given the right inputs. Animal fats and proteins do not force appetite control. They restore it. They stabilize the hormones that govern hunger, stress, and energy. And when those hormones are stable, the constant battle with food finally ends. Not with discipline, but with biological peace. For decades, we were taught that health had to be complicated. Count the calories, track the points, measure every gram, fear every bite. And yet, despite all this effort, Obesity, diabetes, and metabolic disease have exploded worldwide. That contradiction forces us to face an uncomfortable truth. Complexity has failed us. The human body was never designed to micromanage food. It was designed to respond to signals. And simplicity, real simplicity, is what restores those signals. When meals are built around simple, real, zero-carb foods, something remarkable happens almost immediately. Decision fatigue disappears. There are no labels to decode, no hidden sugars to worry about, no marketing tricks disguised as health food. This matters more than people realize. Studies in behavioral nutrition show that decision overload increases stress hormones like cortisol, which directly raise blood sugar and insulin. Complexity doesn't just confuse the mind, it disrupts metabolism. Simplicity calms both. From a biological standpoint, the body thrives on predictability. When you repeatedly eat the same clean, nutrient-dense foods, your digestive system adapts. Enzyme production becomes efficient. Gut inflammation decreases. Research on elimination diets shows that removing dietary variables often leads to rapid improvements in bloating, joint pain, skin conditions, and autoimmune symptoms. Zero-carb simplicity functions the same way. Fewer inputs mean fewer immune reactions. The gut finally gets a break. One of the most shocking facts in nutrition science is how little variety the body actually needs to thrive. Essential nutrients are finite. Protein, essential fatty acids, vitamins, and minerals can be obtained consistently from a small group of animal foods. In contrast, modern diets rely on endless variety to stimulate appetite, not nourish the body. This constant novelty overstimulates dopamine pathways in the brain, driving overeating without satisfaction. Simplicity reverses this hijacking. When food stops acting like entertainment, appetite regulation returns. This is why people eating simple keto meals often report something unexpected. They stop thinking about food. Functional MRI studies show that hyperpalatable foods activate reward centers in the brain similarly to addictive substances. Ultra-processed foods keep the brain in a state of constant anticipation. Simple, whole foods do not. They nourish without overstimulation. And when the brain is no longer chasing dopamine hits from food, mental space opens up for life again. Simplicity also removes one of the greatest hidden stressors in dieting: inconsistency. Every time you eat a food that spikes blood sugar or insulin unexpectedly, the body must compensate. Insulin rises, cortisol follows, inflammation increases. Over time, this unpredictability trains the body to resist change. Studies on metabolic adaptation show that consistent macronutrient intake improves insulin sensitivity more effectively than fluctuating diets. Zero-carb simplicity creates metabolic rhythm. The body knows what to expect, and it responds by becoming efficient again. There is a profound energy advantage to this approach. When meals are predictable and insulin remains low, the body learns to access stored fat reliably. This eliminates the panic response that drives constant snacking. Research on fat adaptation shows that once the body trusts fat as a fuel source, energy becomes stable across long periods without food. This is why people naturally drift into intermittent fasting when eating simply, not because they are forcing it, but because their energy no longer depends on frequent intake. Another overlooked benefit of simplicity is nutrient absorption. Complex meals with processed ingredients interfere with digestion. Anti-nutrients, emulsifiers, and additives disrupt gut permeability and enzyme function. Animal-based zero-carb foods avoid these pitfalls entirely. They are digested efficiently, absorbed fully, and leave minimal waste. This reduces oxidative stress in the gut and lowers systemic inflammation. Fewer digestive battles mean more energy available for repair and healing. Simplicity also restores trust. Trust in hunger, trust in fullness, trust in the body's signals. Decades of diet culture taught people to distrust themselves. Eat this, not that. Now avoid that too. Hunger became something to fear, but when food is simple and metabolically safe, hunger becomes informative again. Clinical observations show that patients eating clean ketogenic diets regain accurate hunger cues within weeks. They eat when hungry, stop when full, and feel no need to negotiate with themselves. This is not willpower, it is alignment. From a long-term health perspective, simplicity is protective. Chronic diseases are driven by chronic exposure to sugar, to insulin, to inflammation. Removing these exposures consistently matters more than chasing perfection occasionally. Epidemiological data shows that populations with the lowest rates of metabolic disease eat repetitive whole food diets. Variety is not the virtue we were promised. Consistency is. Perhaps the most powerful effect of simplicity is sustainability. Complex diets require constant motivation. Simple systems run automatically. When meals are easy to prepare, easy to repeat, and easy to trust, adherence skyrockets. This is confirmed repeatedly in dietary intervention studies. The simpler the protocol, the higher the compliance and the better the outcomes. Health is not built in bursts of effort. It is built in patterns repeated quietly over time, and there is an emotional freedom that comes with this. When food is no longer the center of stress, guilt, or obsession, something shifts. People describe feeling calm around meals for the first time in decades. Anxiety decreases, confidence grows, not because of weight loss alone, but because the body finally feels predictable and safe. Simplicity removes the constant internal negotiation that drains mental energy. This is why zero-carb simplicity is not restrictive. It is liberating. It strips away the noise that kept the body confused and inflamed. It allows biology to do the regulating. It turns health from a daily struggle into a background process, quietly working in your favor. In the end, the most radical thing you can do for your health is not add more rules, more tracking, or more complexity. It is to remove what never belonged there in the first place. Simple foods, clear signals, consistent inputs. When simplicity becomes the foundation, long-term keto success stops being a goal and starts becoming a natural outcome. One calm, nourishing meal at a time.